Hello everyone and welcome back to the Silicon Sounds YouTube channel, audio for the rest of us. Today I have a very easy, at least for me, review to deal with. It's definitely one of the easiers. Why? Not for anything other than the fact that the Venture Electronics BIE IEM that we're talking about here is not a pretentious product at all. It doesn't hide its character, or is a difficult IEM to get the synergy just right with respect to tips and source and whatnot. What you have here is a deceptively simple IEM housed in a very attractive and small bullet style alloy shell. It features a captive cable, which some may not like, but given the price and given the performance, I think it's fine. The cable itself is not that easy to tangle. You can get it tangled, but it's quite easy to undo. The length is long enough and it works for what it is. There's another version called a Bie Pro that adds, changes the tuning somewhat, and also adds a captive, removable cable. But here we have the original version, the BIE. The details really is what matters when it comes to an IEM such as this, and this is where the BIE really stands out and surprises, a pleasant surprise. On offer here is the easy-to-drive V-shaped tuning with a bass head level enhanced low end. This doesn't mean that the low end is poor or muddy. We'll get to that in a bit. Some may stop here and think, oh, it's just a one-trick pony. Absolutely not. The BIE is anything but that. The mids and treble are definitely not an afterthought, and add up to a listening experience that is actually very pleasing and fun, while thankfully not being fatiguing in the process, which I find many bass heads earphones tend to gravitate towards. Let's talk a little bit about specs. We're talking about an impedance of 32 ohms, sensitivity of 115 dB, very easy to drive, wide frequency range listed at 17 hertz to 22 kilohertz for better, for worse. It's a 12 millimeter shell. It has a 10 millimeter dynamic driver listed as an N52 plus. I'm not sure exactly what that means. The shell is aluminum alloy with a matte finish, and the cable comes with a single-ended 3.5 millimeter standard plug. Cable length is 1.2 meters, which is the same length as the majority of add-on cables, so you won't find this to be too short. And thankfully, the split is quite even. Great to go into the gym. The fit is actually very good. I find that bullet-style earphones such as this, the choice of tips is critical for comfort and to maintain them in the air in your ear without moving. On this particular time, I have the Final Audio E Clears 2020 version. As we can see, the filter right there. Very simple, but deceptively so. So, notes. Let's talk about build quality. Metal shells are solid and feel of really good quality. The cable is captive and somewhat thin, but really not that prone to getting tangled up in knots. It's very easy to undo. Packaging and accessories are all very basic. Comes in a bag with some extra air tips, but it's very well presented. Fit is not an issue. Stays firmly in my ear. Once again, very tip dependent with respect to fit. In terms of synergy, it's not picky at all. So tip dependency is more on fit with these. You want a good seal, in particular since it's bass oriented. You won't get that quality of the bass unless the seal is very good. Once proper tips were selected, it stayed in the air without any issue. Let's get right into the sound. Bass is strong, goes very, very deep. This thing keeps going up the lower it goes. I've listened to a number of earphones, and the BIE, in my recent memory at least, has never been beaten for how deep it can dig with respect to bass. This little thing, incredible for that. Bass is strong, impactful, with bass head level growl. Thankfully, the quality of the bass is actually pretty good. It's clean with good speed and separation, adding a solid foundation to all musical genres. It is, in its price range, you would be hard-pressed to find another IEM with the combination of depth and quality. In the 20-something some odd dollars that this costs, I don't know of any other IEMs that dig this deep, but at the same time, the quality of the bass is pretty good. Most of them, ones that do dig deep, and there's very few that dig deep like this, I'll tell you, the quality of the bass is middling at best. With this one, the quality is actually pretty good. Overall bass control is admirable and the BIE does not sound sloppy. With satisfactory snap as well, listening to smooth jazz, it really came through. It kept up. It may fall a little bit down on very complex tracks, but even then, much less so than some of its competitors in the price range. If anything, bass could be just a little bit more textured. Considering its other attributes, though, I would still call this a very impressive performance in the bass. You would think that mids and treble would be an afterthought with an earphone that is bass-centric. Absolutely not. The mid-range of the BIE is not a forgotten quantity. As in many bass-oriented headphones, it is slightly recessed, but it's clean, with adequate detail and thankfully free of harshness. The BIE is not a detail monster by any stretch of the imagination, but it does have enough detail just to keep things interesting. The mids do have a touch of warmth and are expressive while having just enough detail retrieval to just keep you focused on what's going on and more be able to get into the music. Layer separation was pretty good, but not class leading, while timbre is actually surprisingly natural. Once again, another surprise from this offering from Venture Electronics. Treble is moderately extended with good clarity and control. Again, an afterthought in many bass, quote unquote, bass head IEMs, but not in the BIE. There's no harshness and glare, and adequate amounts of air and sparkle were noted. As with the mids, overall level fell a little bit behind that of the bass, but the tuning allowed the mids and treble not to be overshadowed. They walked a fine line here and they really achieved something special with that. So they don't get lost in the mix. The bass doesn't just take over. It's there, it's present, it's definitely there. It's saying, hey, I'm here. But the mids and the treble don't get lost and get run over by the bass. Treble on the BIE is actually pleasant, open sounding, and unfatiguing to listen to for extended periods. It's not the most detailed or airy due to its moderate extension, but considering all the other attributes, surprisingly good. Image and Soundstage. This is where things also get very, very special. The BIE images quite well. Width is well done, and surprisingly, depth is ample as well. For inner monitors, that is a rarity, actually. I say surprisingly because at this price range, you don't really get that. Imaging is often not something to write home about at this price range, in particular for earphones where its claim to fame is fantastic deep thumping bass. The BIE casts an immersive soundstage with solid instrument placement, making it very engaging to listen to. So all in all, taken as what it is, this is a definitely good sounding earphone with a bass emphasis. Other than I feel kind of remiss. I'd be remiss if I just called it a bass head earphone. It's not. It's a well-tuned earphone with bass emphasis. We'll put it like that. I think to call it bass head would be to categorize it and kind of give it a stigma, and it's not. So let's talk about some competitors. I have one right here, the Tantrum Tanya. If anybody has listened to this, it's been a polarizing release, but for $20 or $22 US, one of the most musical earphones. The Tantrum Tanya is tuned in such a way that it gives a nice, cohesive, organic sound that is unheard of at this price. It gives you a hint in what some of the more expensive IEMs will sound like. Yes, it does not go as deep, definitely, as some others, and the treble is rolled off a little early, but what is there is very engaging. Now, how do we compare the two? In a nutshell, the Tanya is the technical champ, while the BIE is more fun. Absolutely. The bass is surprisingly capable on the Tanya when driven properly. Again, the Tanya needs a little bit of power. It might look small and simple, but really responds to better power. It can't dig as deep as the BIE, and almost nothing can, especially in this price range, nor slam as hard. Mids are more detailed on the Tanya with an obvious heightened upper mid-range compared to the BIE. The Tanya takes the lead also with respect to mid-range in terms of musicality, but both of them make for a pleasurable listen that you can have in your ears for a long time and not feel like you want to pull them out due to harshness. Treble, though, is not so cut and dry. Both are moderately extended with treble roll-off in the higher regions of the treble. But each has an unfatiguing and clean treble presentation. The Tanya, when it's not adequately amped, tends to have a very flat 2D sound. This is one advantage that the BIE may have, is that you can extract most of the performance out of BIE without having to deal with a separate amplifier or a more capable dongle or phone like the LG V series, for example, over the Tanya, which really comes to life only when it's given a more powerful source. The Tanya closes the gap with that treble and is just a bit more detailed. Each, though, is a keeper. Here we have technical versus fun. In conclusion, the Venture Electronics BIE, or as the full name Bonus IE, is a very good product, which deserves a serious look for anyone who likes their bass served on a silver platter, while still having good mids and treble for dessert. I'm not usually a fan of bass head-tuned earphones. I usually don't like them because of the compromises that come usually with a bass head earphone. But I will say, the BIE really surprised me, and I found myself listening for long sessions, trying to go through all my tracks to see what this will bring to the table and how it sounds so different. It was a very pleasurable experience. There's enough openness and clarity here to keep me coming back for more. The BIE is not, I repeat, not a one-trick pony. At the price of $20 USD, it deserves to be on a short list for anyone looking to purchase an IEM in that price range, and even if you have a little bit more to spend. The Venture Electronics Bonus IE BIE gets a definite recommendation. So that's my review of the Venture Electronics BIE, another must-have, as well as the Tanya. But they're completely tuned differently for different listeners or for different styles, or let's just call it different moods. Once again, the BIE is a fun listen, but still has the technicalities enough to make it not seem or appear overly like a one-trick pony at all. The treble and the mids are not an afterthought. They're actually quite well done. Fall a little bit behind the Tanya in terms of technicalities, but if you want some fun, if you want to listen to some house music, some EDM, the BIE is probably your better choice. When it comes to smooth jazz, I might select the Tanya over the BIE, but it really depends on the track. That being said, if one is in my ear, I'm not going to pull it out to put in the other one just because I'm listening to different tracks. That shows you how versatile the BIE is again. Thanks for watching the video. That's my review of the Venture Electronics Bonus IE. Please subscribe to the channel, support us. And we also have an Instagram presence, and we have a blog where both of these IMs, we'll concentrate on the BIE for now, are reviewed. We'd like your support in terms of membership, so just give a thumbs up, post, I should say not post, but subscribe and support a growing community. Take care, everyone, and have a great day from Silicon Sounds. Audio for the rest of us.